Ladies and gentlemen, the Managing Director of IDC Asia Pacific, Dr. Chris Holmes.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. If you notice, I made my stage entrance by feet. Old technology, I know, but still valuable. So what I want to do in the next 15 minutes is to just give you some food for thought in terms of what we're seeing as the opportunity for digital transformation. And the one thing that I want you to take away from what I'm going to say to you this afternoon is that it is real, and it is here, and it is happening now. Okay? If you don't want to listen to anything else I've got to say, just remember that one thing. So, again, we get a lot of questions within my team. And by the way, I think I have one of the coolest jobs on the planet because I get to talk to all of you about what you're doing with technology. So I get to hear all the stories, see all the examples as to how you're embracing technology to make fundamental business changes. That's the cool part of my job. The not so cool bit is actually trying to put some spending numbers and some sizing around that, but I'll share that with you shortly. But when we talk around transformation, there's a lot of confusion that we still see amongst people thinking about or starting to embark on projects. I want to be clear. It's not about buying a new printer. It's not about installing a single piece of software. It's not about buying a new server. It's fundamentally changing the way you operate, the way you make decisions using technology. Fundamental, okay? It's not business as usual and we just sort of enhance it, we speed it up a little. It's completely rethinking the way that we actually operate our businesses. And I'll give you some examples as we go through this presentation, but it's things like using artificial intelligence to apply it to equipment so we can predict failure rates. It's things about enhancing the customer experience, the personalized approach. This is what we're talking about. And where we see people investing today, we see there's two waves of investment going on. The first wave of digital transformation really focuses on driving efficiencies. It's improving the way we operate. But again, it's that transformational way how we operate. Predictive maintenance. We're starting to see more and more work around this idea of self-healing processes. The factory is becoming fully automated. The days of the lights-out factory are here. We're seeing robot picking in warehouses. Again, lights out. We're seeing cities focus on actually looking at bin collection, not on a regular daily or weekly schedule, but when the bins are full. We're seeing cities invest in lighting that actually comes on when it's needed, not is on all the time. Again, examples from across all different industry verticals. The second wave is where we start to see the focus on the customer experience, changing the way we actually engage with our customers, rethinking about that relationship so that when someone is selling to me, they're selling to Chris, not a random white male fast approaching 50 who's losing his hair. It's also about when we start to think about business to business, understanding that customer and what can we do more for them. Thinking about how we actually operate the supply chain, that shift towards perfect order fulfillment. Right goods, right quantity, right quality, right paperwork, right payment. It's also saying to the customer, is that really how you want to be served going forward? Or would you be better buying a service? So this notion of the change in the business model, the product as a service. These are the questions that we're seeing companies such as yourselves start to ask. And you need to start thinking about those, because if you're not, I can guarantee someone else in your industry is. So, the reality. In 2018, we expect worldwide spending on digital transformation, this is the hardware, the software, the services, to be over $1.1 trillion. I'll just let that sink in. It's a big number, a very big number. And what's really interesting when we did the work to figure out what this spend number was going to be is that we started to look at it from a different approach. We started to look at how companies were changing business outcomes. And when we talk about changing business outcomes, it's about putting a combination of technologies together to have a business impact. When we look at transformation, we look at it from 5 pillars. And in fact, the theme of fearless, I think, applies to the first one very appropriately, leadership transformation. In all the work that we've been doing, looking at how and why transformation projects succeed, it's the leader who's driving it. And why do they fail? It's because the leader isn't driving it. We also talk around this notion around customer experience transformation. Again, how we engage with those people who are actually buying our product or our service. It's about the information transformation. I know all of you collect data. Do you use it? I know a lot of you don't. But we're starting to see more and more organizations look at data as another resource that can be sold. It's another product, it's another service. And those of you who are attending the transportation workshop tomorrow will have further discussions on this. It's also around the operating model, primarily IoT driven. And again, we've seen the discussion go from what is IoT to, okay, where am I going to implement it within my organization? Becoming more and more widespread, and again, more and more of an offering of a complete product set. We also talk about the workforce transformation, because this brave new world of operating digitally is going to be changed. The job I did 20 years ago, which actually was calculating spare parts for aircraft engines, is now all done by sensors. My job is gone. What is the role of the supply chain planner going forward? It's going to be automated. We need to think about how our organizations are going to change, how the people are going to have to change to work in these new type of environments. And again, we started to do a lot of work around sort of project-based, outcome-based ways in which organizations are going to operate going forward. So, when I said digital transformation is real, the boxes on here represent the size of the spend in different use cases. There's a lot more behind this, but these are the big ones, okay? And the number is by how fast it's growing. What you can see is the 2 largest areas of growth in the Asia-Pacific, excluding Japan, region, are robotics. Robotics in manufacturing and robotics in healthcare. I will say these numbers are somewhat skewed by China. China is the largest purchaser of robotics in the world at this precise moment in time, and will continue to do so going forward. But when we start to think about robotics, and again, in large, medium, smaller organizations, too expensive, too complex, I'm telling you, the price is dropping significantly. We're seeing more and more automated warehouses. we're seeing more and more implementations in the retail and the hospitality sector. You walk into an airport and you're greeted by a robot who will then scan your passport and issue you your boarding pass. Things like freight management. This is where we're starting to see asset tracking, use of IoT, product assurance, understanding where the products are at any particular time, where your assets are. Asset instrumentation, predictive maintenance, we've talked about that. Autonomic operations, excuse me. This is an interesting one. This is all to do with self-healing processes. So again, I want you to think of your factory. You have a machine. We embed some intelligence in the machine starts to fix itself when it detects there's an error. We then put in a line of machines, and across each of those machines we have that intelligence, but across all of the machines we also have some intelligence. The factory will start to configure itself and run itself based on where the technology has come from and the use of artificial intelligence. So again, a whole host of areas that we're really starting to see pick up in terms of investment in this part of the world. What's holding us back? What we do see is that a lot of you still have islands of innovation. You've got islands of technology. Things aren't connected. I also won't ask you how many of you are still running your business on Microsoft Excel. Yeah, I normally get a laugh, more than we know. But what I want to talk to you about very quickly is, and suggest to you, is that you really need to start thinking about how you can bring these islands together, these islands of technology. Because what we're also starting to see is there's a new growth in terms of shadow IT. A lot of people are attending conferences such as you today. They're hearing about the brave new world of technology, but then they go back into their organization and the enterprise systems really aren't delivering what they actually want. So they're going out and buying services, software as a service. All you need is a credit card. We can hide it on the expense report. And so we're starting to see another growth in terms of this shadow IT. So again, you as IT professionals need to really start thinking about how you can put in place the mechanisms that you can actually satisfy those business outcomes, put a plan in place, and communicate with the users. And what we're suggesting going forward is that the fundamental decision that IT decision makers are going to make over the next 2 years is around the platform, this idea of an intelligent platform, something that actually brings all the data together and enables us to actually act on that data. And what's interesting about this is we're not just talking about acting on the data from an information technology perspective, but acting on the data from a technology perspective. And again, things when we start to talk about the robotics, whether in the warehouse, whether in healthcare, whether on the manufacturing shop floor, whether in the city, actually starting to coordinate with those pieces of equipment. So it's no longer just a platform for information technology, it's a platform for technology. And this, we think, is going to be the prime driver, prime business decision that organizations are going to need to make over the next 1 to 2 years. So, the challenge, and I do like the theme of fearless, we see it becoming more and more focused on the leaders in your organization. You've got a horrendous job to do because everyone knows what the technology is capable of, but you're sat there with these legacy systems, these islands of IT, these islands of innovation, and your budget really isn't getting much, much bigger. You really need to think about how you're actually going to change going forward. Really doing more with less. And then on the other side, You've got those unicorns, you've got those startups, you've got those people who have no legacy starting to come after your businesses. If you were to set up your business today, what would it look like using the latest technology? Would you have the big monolithic ERP implementation, or would you have a SaaS model? Would you buy everything in, or would you operate on an OpEx model? More and more we're seeing organizations who've changed, have really focused on actually throwing out some of the things that they've held dear for the past 20, 30 years. And that's when you need to be fearless. You need to let go of what's working today and think about what's going to work tomorrow. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Fear of failure. When I said I have a great job talking to you about all the technology that you work and use, in public forums, I get told the success stories. Normally at the bar, I get told the failures. Because no one actually really wants to advertise those. And there are a lot, okay? Do not worry, you are not alone. There are a lot of technology failures out there. But from the example about Thomas Edison, you need to keep on trying. And I would also say to you that the failures are getting less and less. There's far more learning that's been achieved over the last 12, 18 months in terms of this transformation than we've seen in the previous 10, 20 years. So again, it is getting easier. But there is going to be some disruption to your business. You are going to be challenged. There is going to be risk. And that's why I say it really needs to come from the top in terms of driving some of these fundamental changes. So my last word to you is really, digital is no longer an if, it's a when. And you really need to get those roadmaps, get those development plans, get those partners in place that are going to enable you to fundamentally change. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I hope I've given you some food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chris Holmes.